Welcome, mortals, to the very first Talkback debrief discussion, whatever you want to call it, episode for Godkiller Retribution. I am, as always, Asteria.
And I am Ian Frost, still to this day and evermore.
And evermore. And we just finished filming, or recording, I should say, because there's no visuals. Godkiller Retribution episode 2, and it was good.
Yeah, it was good.
It was really good.
It was good.
I want to do these sort of like talk back, debrief, discussion, whatever you want to call it, episodes every 2 or 3 episodes, just because we can't fucking shut up every time we refilm something.
We waste valuable content on...
For the next like 2 to 3 to 8 to 16 to a week hours after we record an episode, we can't shut the fuck up. So we're just gonna film it for you and go through episodes 1 and 2 of Godkiller with our immediate reactions, at least for episode 2, because we just filmed it 5 minutes ago.
And in that 5 minutes, we're just standing, stretching our pained butts.
From sitting for a very, very long time, and also de-sweatifying, because I know we look perfect. We look exactly as dewy as we need to, but it's really bad in the armpit zone. Yeah. So, without further ado, what do you think? What do you think? I'm having so much fun.
This is wild for me. I feel I should tell the audience I've never done anything like this. I mean, I've been playing RPGs for... Okay, wait, let me think. Like, how long ago was 2009? It's like 16 years. I think I just did that math recently. It's like 16 years.
I hate that that's true.
But it is.
Ew.
That's, I started in high school, so it's been a good 16 years, which is over half of my life. I have been playing games, and then, for a little bit less than that, I've been running games, and on Chance Encounters, we've done so many different, systems and stuff. And still, this is so different for me than anything else. The idea of, like, I'm pretty confident in my role-playing abilities at this point. It's exciting for me when I'm afraid, which is something I share with Vos. It's exciting for me when I'm afraid as a player, because it means I'm challenging myself. It means that I'm doing something new, and most of the time I think that I'm going to pull a better performance out of myself if I feel that sense of risk, if I don't know what I'm going to say next, But with this, I really underestimated how it was going to feel to be like, I am the only player, I'm the only character in a player role. Obviously, you're over 50% of the equation, but it's different when the player workload is split among more people. It's just like, I feel a pressure and a weight every time I open my mouth. And at first, the fear was different than the fear that I'm used to. It was like, it honestly, it inspired the idea for me to have Vos be a character who is chasing fear, who has forgotten what that feels like. And that makes me sound like an arrogant piece of something, but...
No, it doesn't.
I'm not afraid. I'm so good at roleplay. But, like, I just mean, I do this a lot in this and in our regular home life. We have a regular home game as well. I teach
He teaches
this.
it.
Like, I do this so much. So for me to feel this level of, like, I am experiencing something completely new. And it's taken me, I think it took me to episode 2 to really feel like I've adjusted to the style, like using the moves a little bit more, finding where the mechanics and the narrative meet, stretching out the sort of, I guess, the obvious definitions of what the moves are. I think, like, the do as you're told move, I had the thought, like, could I count this as that? And that notion of playing with it in that way has really shown me the how much I love this game now. Like I get this now.
He understands.
Yeah.
He understands. Godkiller gang rise up. He understands now.
Yeah.
That's really why I wanted to do a cod killer. Whoa, a Godkiller game. I was inspired by Blackwater D&D. Shout out M. Shout out Yanis, Christian, and Dina. If you're watching this, I love you very, very much. But they did Godkiller first for me. My first Godkiller exposure was Godkiller Oblivion and Balance, which are their two Godkiller shows as of this time of recording. And it really pushed the boundary of what storytelling and actual play could be for me. And like what I could achieve. It really struck a chord of like, this is how I like stories to be told. In a new and a different way, and I was like, well, I like sad philosophical treatises on religion, and Godkiller is about killing gods, so I want to take my shot at it too. And I want to push myself, and I want to be in the GM seat for the first time in maybe 7 years. And I think the actual system itself, Connie Chung knocked it out of the park. It's powered by the apocalypse, so it's based on moves rather than just straight rolling dice and adding numbers. I think the concept of a game based off of moves, and like if you want to do a specific action, there's a move for that, and some of it includes rolling dice and some of it is just pure narrative. We all know that I love narrative. I love narrative more than I love actual mechanics. So a narrative roleplay heavy system, great for me. I've also always loved two-player systems. My first ever two-player system that I've ever played is Star-Crossed by Alex Roberts, which is a dread type game where you are playing two characters that you create that cannot have a relationship for whatever reason. They cannot be romantically entangled, and as you play the game, you pull more and more Jenga blocks, and the game only ends when the tower falls. And depending on how many blocks you've pulled by the time the tower actually ends up falling, it determines the kind of ending that you get. So let's say like you might get a bittersweet ending, and then you narrate what that means, or you might get a happily ever after ending if you pull like a bajillion thousand blocks before the tower falls. And that was the first time that I really was devastated by the power of an intimate two-player system like that, because the person I was playing it with, we did get a bittersweet ending, and what we decided on was just terrible in the best way. And I've been in love with intimate, the word that we keep using is intimate game systems ever since. And so I am just, from listening to it and now playing it, I'm just in love with this system. I love Godkiller so much, and I would go to bat for this system. But yeah, just the world building, the world of Koei is my own creation. I love vampires. They're my favorite of the Ookie Spooky Monster Mash lineup. I love vampires so much. And so I really had the thought of, what if vampires everywhere all the time ruled everything? But it's actually interesting because I was originally going to run D&D as my first show on the channel, and then M, actually was like, why don't you just do Godkiller? Why don't you just do Godkiller? Just do Godkiller. And I was like, you're so right. You're 1,000% right. So actually, this show's sort of conception, cue the spinning top, is due to M. Carlson. So everyone say thank you, M, for this one. And that's something that's very fun for me, because the current time that we're in now for Godkiller is in the past for when I was writing the campaign for Koei. So there are world state things that I know about for the future that have not come to pass yet in this show. And I can't wait to build up to them because they're pretty cool. Do you have any sort of like first thoughts, first reactions that you had when we were playing the first episode about like the world, and like any questions you had that I maybe be able to answer?
Questions at the moment, no, because I'm inclined to see. It's funny because I'm usually being on the other end of this all the time. When you ask me questions about our home game or stuff, I have to be like, I can't say, right? so it's like sort of ingrained in me to be like, no, there's no purpose. No, I'll keep them to myself and like wait to see how they happen. But in terms of like first impression of this setting, I think there's something so fun to me about the fact that on the surface, on paper, it is a dark world. Like, it is literally a dark world. Like, you tell somebody there's no light anywhere, it's run by vampires, and the game system that it uses is Godkiller, and it's like dark, philosophical. Like, everything about it sounds really intense and like a setting that you would populate with violence and horror. But the story that we're telling here is like, I'm sure those things are present, but it's also a very sweet, intimate story. I'm not gonna call it a love story just yet. It's there.
Vos thinks it's a love story.
Yes,
absolutely. The energy we're going into is like, it's going to be a love story, but we haven't really like started like the plot yet. Like everything is like we're building right now, right? And so where we leave off in episode 2 is the start of the Ruby calling, and once we get there, things are gonna pop off, and that's where sort of like the darkness is gonna come in. That's where the real like sort of moral and ideological quandaries are gonna come in. But I didn't want to like go full throttle. I did want it to feel like a build. But no,
it does. I mean, I just think my absolute favorite thing that's happening so far is the way you're developing tone. I am a sucker for contrast in that way. So that was very easy for me to slot into.
I don't want to bounce around too much between the 2 episodes. I kind of do want to go in like chronological order, but like in this past episode, in episode 2, when Etuvar gets all up in Vos's face, I wanted that to be sort of like the first sort of like clue of where we're going with the tone of the story. Of like, he's been cool, he's been sort of like snarky with Vos because that's kind of his personality, but if you push him enough, he's still a god, he's still scary, you know? And I wanted to use that moment to sort of illustrate that things are gonna get a little crazy.
Yeah, oh man, that scene was so much fun.
Would you believe it was all improv? Sorry, I didn't interrupt you, but would you believe that we do improv?
Yes. I mean, that scene was really fun because exploring the idea of a character who has distanced himself from his own emotions, in some ways on purpose, in a lot of other ways inadvertently. Like, he's just been hollowed out by time and what he does, and probably the power, the external thing he doesn't understand but uses anyway, that's on his person 100% of the time, even when he sleeps, that's going to take a toll, you know, that he's accepted to be the tool that he is. So in that moment, I was hearing telegraphing, like, this is the scary thing and it should be scary. And for me, I had this moment of, like, as a player, the good player instinct is to, like, I should lean into this and allow you to show that this is scary, and I don't want to undercut that while still being true to the character who doesn't understand to be no, that was it. That was what I realized in that moment. In real time, was like, he understands how scary a situation he's in, and the fear is that, like, that old adage of, like, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. Right? But it's the opposite of that. What he's afraid of is not feeling fear, because, like I said in the episode, that's a survival instinct that he's missing. It's a weakness that he can't feel fear. And so he's trying to find it. And I think part of what ultimately is making him come around to this guy is that maybe it's, like, possible, So that was what I found in that moment, was like, logically, I understand how terrifying this is. And I know that I'm going to try to show that I'm afraid, but I'm just so curious. And for me also, like, being autistic is the biggest pull for that. Like, it's very easy for me to draw from that, because that is an experience that I have all the time. Is like, I know the emotion I should logically be feeling here, and I want to be feeling it, so let me do the motion of the emotion I should be feeling right now, and maybe it'll get me to actually have it for real. So thank you for letting me sort of have that in that moment. I hope I didn't undercut the actual, like, horror of the moment, because it was there. It was cool.
What I was afraid of, what I am afraid of with Etuvar, is that it's not coming across that, like, a big inspiration for how I want the gods to be in this world is based on, like, Grecian myth and, like, the Old Testament, where God is, like, just, like, emotional, powerful guy who just, like, kills people. But especially so, sort of like the old Greek mythology of, like, these are people with flaws, and they have, like, a family tree, and it's messy, and I won't do, like, the weird, like, incestuous parts of Greek myth, but, like, but, like, the family tree drama, and, like, the concept of, like, these are, right now, they can take a more human form, and people know them in a more human, I say in quotes, but, like,
human form,
a more human form, and people know that, they know them in that form. And so a lot of gods they hang out on Earth with the mortals. Etivar being a big one. His creation myth of the vampires, of he cut himself hunting, is a very mortal thing to happen to a god, but the consequences of that are very, like, big and divine, and, like, he created a whole new race of, or origin of people, and it really changed the world in a major way. Some think for the better. A lot of vampires would say, like, we have society now because of it, and a lot of people would say maybe not so much for the better, because the before times, before vampires were quote unquote civilized, before they were reined in, it was dark times. And so, Etuvar, he's the first god I ever made, so he's my guy. He's my special guy, and I love him so much, and I think about him all the time. And so what I was talking to Ian off camera in those 5 minutes where we were stretching and massaging our sore butts, and making them not sore anymore, was like, he really truly meant that he prefers when people see him as a man. When he said "so do I" to Vos, he meant that shit.
That was hard.
He meant that shit.
Yeah, that went hard.
Because he sees himself as a father, and I think that I hammered that home pretty clearly in episode 1. But he sees himself as a father first and a god second. And that's why he's so cool. That's why from his end, there wasn't a lot of conflict coming from him. And that's why I wanted to, when I decided to put you in the dark space, as I'm so lovingly calling it, I wanted to give at least a little bit of conflict to show that he's not just like a perfect angel all the time.
Yeah. And that's, I feel that. I really I feel it happening, because there's a contract, I think, between player and GM that you offer something to the world building, right? Like with both actual like RPG writing and RPG inspired writing, the style that exists in namely adventure-based RPGs that has transcended that and gone into other mediums, things like Rogue One that's a TTRPG movie.
It's a D&D movie, and I won't hear anything else about it.
Yeah, I teach a whole class on this. The idea of everything is TTRPG, but like the idea is that as a player, and now especially as the only player, it's like even more true for me in character creation that I had to approach this as, what can I do to best be a window for your world building? And in a setting and system where everything is based around the gods, my thought was, if I'm a very devoted, pious figure, it would actually be harder for me to teach the audience about the gods and the setting. But if I'm a character who is a little closer to home for me in reality, where I'm not particularly religious, I have my own weird sort of philosophical like version of reality that I think about, but I don't subscribe to any particular religion. And so I wanted to explore the idea of being a character who has that mentality in a world where the gods are objectively real, so that hopefully, and I say hopefully, but it's already happening, I think, that I can be taught, even just jumping from episode 1 to episode 2. In episode 1, when we did our private talkback thing off camera, one of the first things that you said to me was like, you were so surprised that Vos's first reaction to Etuvar was so like hostile, that he was so like immediately like, what are you doing in my house? What, are you threatening my friend? Like he didn't talk like he was in the presence of a god at all. And so I thought about that, and between episode 1 and 2, I had this notion that he would need to learn a little bit more, The idea of, you don't know who I am, let me explain, became possible in that moment. And then I got to internalize that, and I went back into the source material and tried to like bring it out. And then so when I told the story of the stone and brought like Vile into the mix and stuff, it's like he went back into the recesses of his mind and is like, this stuff does live in me, it just hasn't had meaning up until this point, So for me, that was how I wanted to serve the relationship, so that things that I did, character choices that I made, could all be windows into the world building, so that you could have an easier time showing the coolest elements of the setting that you made.
And it slayed. Everything about it slayed. The distrust of Etuvar in episode 1, I was able to fold my surprise into Etuvar, because Etuvar just wants to be seen as a guy, you know. I
Hey,
think
I'm the best guy for that job.
he sometimes forgets that he is a god. Not all the way, but like, you know, he was talking to Essie and he was having a good conversation with her, and he was like, "Okay, cool, cool, cool. The people in this town are cool. Like, if he's anything like my little girl at home, he'll be a cool guy, and we'll just bro down, right?" And so when that didn't happen, he was like, he was like, "Why are you being mean to me?" Um,
And there's deeper reasons that we haven't, that the audience has not seen yet.
yeah.
There is actually some truth to that mistrust. It is not just ignorance.
Well, that's the other thing. The sort of drip feeding of lore is very intentional. If you feel hungry to know more, that's the point. I want you to not, as the audience, to not know much about the world until it is revealed to you naturally. Because I love a lore dump as much as the next person. And trust me, lore dumps are coming. But when it comes to world building a new project for something that I want to be as immersive and atmospheric as I want this show to be, um, I don't want you guys to know everything going in, you know? Like, if you listened to episode 2 and you were like, who the fuck is Vile? Uh, through Ian's beautiful storytelling, I think it's pretty clear to understand that Vile is the god of creation and water. Maybe not the water part, but it did happen by a river, so at least creation. And so I don't want to be like, here's all the gods and here's what they're all about, right? Like, up until this point, Ian still has not listened to the very first scene with Noir and me, about what happened with Oseki and Baku. He has not actually listened to the actual scene. Shout out Noir, Rolling with Difficulty podcast, one of my oldest friends from high school, absolute king of space and roleplay storytelling. Um, Ian doesn't know what exactly went down.
I don't know what at all went down.
He doesn't know what went down. He knows the bullet points, right? That like Osaki died and cast what he's now wearing on his neck as a necklace, cast his final shard of divinity to the earth to be hidden, and it was then uncovered by Vosen Tlali. He knows that, but he doesn't know actually what the fuck went down. And so when you listen to it, I think you're gonna be a little gagged.
Likely, yeah.
Because there is a deeper sort of uh, uh, there's a deeper context that you and me at home understand as to why Etuvar said what he said, how he said it, in the way that he said it in episode 2 when it came to discussing Osaki, discussing his cousin and the other gods, as it were. Yeah, I hope that sort of is being built up in a way that you guys are enjoying. Because I'm really trying. I'm really trying my hardest to like build stuff in a satisfying way. But yeah, that story that of Vile and the stone and the two brothers, the one that's pious and the one that's not so pious, that was just straight off the dome from Ian. I didn't know he was gonna do that. We had previously recorded a montage that was gonna be inserted into the episodes as needed, like cut up and inserted, where we had already recorded, like one of the first things we recorded was Tlali and Vos meeting and their relationship and why they parted when they did and everything. And we decided that it, frankly, wasn't good enough. As we got to know Vos more, as I wrote more, as we recorded more, and I edited more, I was like,
and as we just talked about it more,
as we talked about it more,
as is always the case, the character changed and evolved from my first on paper impression. Once I started playing him, a lot of things changed. You know, that fearlessness thing and the chasing fear thing are not things that were part of the character. Those are things that made sense to me as we started. But the other thing too is like how he was before he lost so much of his elf manatee.
Elf manatee, yeah. His NUV manatee.
Yeah. That's a whole other, I was about to derail the whole conversation and say, somebody has to figure out a way to take the word humanity and apply it to a fantasy setting in a way so we can still use that.
Yeah.
Because I find myself wanting to have characters say that because it means something, but it doesn't mean something. Humanity wouldn't be the word you would use in a world where there's more types of people.
I've been using like personhood as a stand-in. Because, like, to me, to be a person is to be compassionate and kind. And, like, if you're not compassionate and kind, this is one flaw with using it. It doesn't make you less than a person. It doesn't mean you should have less rights. So that's, like, the one flaw. But I'm using it in place of, like, all the good things that make a person, right? But that's the closest I've gotten. So sound off in the comments if you can think of a better stand-in for humanity, because obviously not everyone's a human. Actually, most people are not human because, surprise, there are no humans in this world. At least not yet.
Yeah, forgot what I was actually talking about.
Me too.
The character changing and evolving over time and realizing, that's why I wanted to change that. That moment, I felt like I understood who he was before a little bit better.
Yes.
From exploring who he is. And the idea of that story was something that I've been sitting on for a while. Like that was not like an improv thing. That was, I asked you a bunch of questions while
well, it
we
was
were
improv
like out.
for me because I didn't know it was going to happen.
Well, that was the thing, right? We were like out on a walk, hanging out, and out on a date. And I was like, you know, okay, wait, remind me which god is credited with creation. Is it okay if there's like oral storytelling, sort of like personal creation myths in the town? Would you need me to run that by you? Is it okay if I come up with something like that? Like, is it okay if you're surprised by that?
And I forgot about it, so I was surprised by it.
That's really funny. But yeah, that was the conversation that we had to make sure that me as a player, I wasn't like stepping on your toes as the world builder. In that way, you know, I didn't want to change your lore. I just wanted to add something to the town a little bit that meant something to him and could be something foundational that we could keep calling back to with their relationship and honestly in his worldview. Naming the bird perfect thing after that was like...
Naming the bird perfect thing almost took me out. I was so good. And I almost didn't give perfect thing a voice of its own.
I was surprised by that, yeah.
But then I was like, no, it's more fun if there's more people in Vos's head. You know, if it's just Etuvar, then I think it would have sort of bled into the like, and everything's perfect and fine with Etuvar all the time, and it's good, and he's our best friend ever, and he's my best friend ever. That's true. He's my little guy. But the fact that perfect thing is their own person, quote unquote, is their own bird, you know, and can be in Vos's head and can talk to they have their own birdhood and can talk to Vos, but that fact still means that they've opened the door to Etuvar being in Vos's head. It gives that edge, right, to the relationship, to Etuvar and to perfect thing. But what I was saying about re-recording the meeting between Vos and Tlali is like, we still have that recording. I might release it as some sort of like AU timeline situation. I gave Tlali a southern accent in that episode, and I hated it, which is part of the reason why we re-recorded it. I much prefer her voice that I gave her for this flashback. And so that's the beauty about, like, especially like an audio medium, is that we had the option to do that. We had the option to say, no one's going to see this, so we don't have to care about visual continuity. So unless we tell them, like I just did, that we re-recorded stuff, like, no one's going to know. No one's gonna know. um, and I don't know, it's just so fun and so free to do audio only. Like, I want to do these talkbacks on camera because I want to feel the connection with you guys at home. And also, like, I look good, we look good, and I need everyone to see me in makeup because this is the only time that I ever do it. Um, but it was such a fun world building thing because I had forgotten that he had this story prepped. It was such a fun world building thing. Now it's something that I can pull in to the world building, and like mentioning Vile for the first time in this story and getting nothing else about Vile and what they're like, playing perfectly into how I want to build out the world building of this story. So I give a clap. A clap, clap, clap.
Come on, everybody.
Give me a little clap. Come on, everybody, give me.
clap.
Okay. I don't know where to go from there. So I'm just going to move on. Shout out Zach Oyama for one of the funniest characters to ever grace our screen. Any screen ever. Yeah.
And Vic Michaelis for being Vic Michaelis.
Vic Michaelis, if you're watching this, I don't know why you're watching this, but we love you.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Essie. What do you think? What do you think's going on with Essie?
My
your
bird friend from the first episode.
Both loves birds. We're finding out.
Yeah, it would seem. Well, it's more of like a. Oh man, well, see, now that's made me think about like in a world where there's like anthropomorphic creature people, because in the real world there's not like a tiny like human looking animal in the wild, but if you're a bird person, you're like, that looks like me, but I'm like a person bird.
Yeah,
that is a weird dynamic to play with that I have to think about more. So I'll put that on the back burner of my brain. But yeah, I don't know, there is something in the bird connection, but for me it's more about the idea of being a hunter and that having purpose, utility that has also a morality and a philosophy around it. There's nothing unique about that, that's just ideally real life, that's cultures all around the world place value and emphasis on the taking of the lives of a creature for your own sustenance and for your own, clothing or whatever you're going to use it for. Like, that means something. You don't take that taking of a life lightly. And that's the one thing that he, like, no matter how much of his elfmanity he loses, he never loses that. That still matters. So I like the idea that this horrifying statue of a man acts like a statue sometimes, and it's like, birds come be on me and hang out. I think that makes a lot, because he has spent so much time standing still and being quiet that, like, I think birds would come and just be on him because they think he's just a thing, if they see him. So the first, like, friend we see him really have be kind of a bird person might have informed the bird idea a little bit for me. I think Essie probably inspired the whole dominoes of birdness. Yeah, in terms of what's going on, I don't know that I suspect anything weird, if I'm being honest. Maybe that's just me wearing my dum-dum hat, but I kind of just thought that she was just like a nice, cool neighbor that kept me honest, that I just enjoyed her company. But I suspect foul play. Well,
I thought I played it like where it's kind of ambiguous if she knew that she was talking to Etuvar or not. You can chime in at home with what you think. I know the answer, and I'm not going to say the answer. But I was curious to see if you had any thoughts on like her. She has a very clear worldview, and I was curious to know if you had any thoughts on it, because you know what, we might not ever see her again. Who knows? I don't know. I've only have a couple more episodes written out as of right now. So we might see her again, but we might not. And so I always like when there's sort of like unanswered questions, especially when it comes to NPCs that aren't so like grabbing that it would be dissatisfying not knowing. But maybe at the end, I'll tell you exactly what's going on with her.
Hmm. I mean, my man knows that his worldview is limited,
Mm-hmm.
that he hasn't been out into the world enough, you know. So the idea that someone that he respects, that he thinks is very wise and good and knowledgeable, the idea that she knew before him who she was talking to that's not going to be surprising to him. I
Mm-hmm.
think you'll find often he assumes other people know more than him
Hmm.
most of the time.
Unless you're Etuvar.
Yeah. So it wouldn't occur to him to be suspicious of anything based on that. He would just think, of course she knows. She knows a lot. She's very smart. She's a very smart lady.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Makes sense. He's drinking that respect SC juice so much that it's like it makes sense. How do we feel about Etuvar saying his name is the same name as the first rabbit Vos ever killed?
That's a lot. Yeah. That's a lot. His name is the same.
Because remember when he introduced himself as Everin, and then when you went to the market, you asked the butcher guy about this rabbit, the first rabbit you ever brought into him or something, and you were
Mhm.
like, I gave it a name. What was the name? And the butcher guy was like, Evarin? Yeah.
Right.
And so the implication there was that it was Everin, and the butcher guy was slightly misremembering it. I just love doing small little details like that are like, what does it mean? I don't know. But it's freaky.
Yeah. Mostly that, I think, is what I think. I will admit I had forgotten about that.
Hmm. I didn't forget. I did not forget.
Well, that's exactly the kind of thing he doesn't like.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I mean, it's freaky and it's weird.
he doesn't. The idea that anything can interfere with the sort of natural order of things, that
Mm.
his perfect idea of God is preserving a natural order, not predetermining things or changing the outcome of things. That trickles into every aspect of his life and his outlook, even into him saying, I'm going to play by the rules and I want to win by the rules.
Mm.
But if you're telling me the gods are not going to do that, they're going to interfere in this thing, then you're going to run interference on the interference if you want something from me. And I want you to cheat the cheaters and keep them from
Mhm.
sullying my win here, right? That's part of that, you know. he wants mortals to be able to
Stand on their own.
be mortals and
Mm-hmm.
do their thing. And you know, even in the story, the two brothers story, it's like the idea that the most pious thing you can do, you know, really respecting the gods, is understanding that they gave you free will and they made a world that could make perfect things on its own, you know. um Everything is perfect in a way because of its imperfection. Now if he can just think of himself that way, that would be lovely. uh but he can certainly think of other things that way. So that's pretty much what that is about, I would say.
Well, it was hard for me in that moment because I had already written down the rules of engagement for the gods regarding the Ruby calling. That's one of the
Mm.
first things I figured out. And so for me, when Vos was like, cheat the cheaters, I was like, ugh, but they already agreed to not cheat. I didn't want it to be like narratively satisfying for
Mm.
Etivar to be like, actually, we have it figured out. But I think I compromised a little bit of like, with Etuvar saying like we have it figured out, but I don't fully trust them.
Yeah.
I don't fully trust some of them, so who knows?
Well, also, just because they have rules of engagement doesn't mean it's part of the actual thing.
Well, that's what I mean.
They,
Like
they have their own rules for how they're going to interfere.
one of the rules is they cannot interfere.
Okay.
That's why I was like, uh-oh, is it narratively satisfying if I just
Yeah.
say that, you know?
It's perfectly fine for Vos to just be wrong in his assumptions.
Yeah. And so that's why I wanted to say, like, actually, they can't interfere. That's part of this whole thing.
Yeah.
But I don't trust some of them. I don't want. Some of them are stanky, and because I know them. um, and you know, truthfully, if I'm being honest, like I know this might be a little bit of a spoiler, but I don't want any of the gods to really interfere. I really want to showcase in the next episode. I want to showcase Vos and what he is capable on his own.
Yeah.
But don't worry, we're gonna meet gods soon enough. Stuff's gonna happen soon enough.
Well, it'll be very, very fun to describe anything combat adjacent, because
Yeah.
that is one of my favorite things. It is one of the things I'm more studied in, I would say. Describing and writing combat is one of my absolute favorite things, and yet another thing I teach a class on. So like, I've thought a lot about his fighting style and like how he uses the spear and how hunting will transfer to fighting people, you know, because there's a difference, you know, and also how being kind of vaguely invisible to people influences the fighting style, especially with someone who is pretty honorable for the most part. It I just yeah, I have a lot of fun with the idea of like all of his biggest assets are things that he really honestly wouldn't want to use against
Yeah.
a person most of the time that he has to like fight against.
How does he feel? I have two questions about how Vos feels. How does he feel knowing that Etivar told him, right now you are as equally as invisible to the gods as you are anyone else. The only reason I know you're here is because I've met you before and I knew you would be here and a little birdie told me where you were.
Oh, that's easy. Truly, it's so simple. That's one of life's great simplicities. It's like he's like, great,
Awesome,
excellent.
love
like,
it.
relief,
Awesome.
happiness, like check mark, box, move on to the actual problems. Knowing that will influence his strategy for sure, but it is a level of comfort, definitely.
Did he process that Etuvar was saying if you go too hard, you will draw the attention and that's bad, though?
Oh yeah, but it doesn't. There's not much he can do about that. Again,
Yeah, like he's gonna do what
he does.
he has to do.
That's the the flaw of thinking of the gods as just overpowered people, is that he's going to underestimate them constantly.
Yeah.
So the thought that it's like, okay, they're going to try to kill me, so is everybody else in the stadium, kind of, in a way. I could die here anyway. What am I going to do? Hold back?
True.
I have to do what I have to do. So he has the value of, like, we just watched The Village last night, M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. If you've only ever heard that the movie is bad, don't listen. It's
It's good. It was just ahead of its time.
Yeah, I don't know what critics were on about with that movie. It's incredible. But Joaquin Phoenix's character in The Village,
love him.
There's a line in the movie where somebody asks him, like, how he can be so fearless. And it's crazy that we just happened to watch this, because like the character of Vos had already formed a lot before this, but I saw the thread, and knowing we were going to film the next day, I was like, oh, this is great. But he, in response to that question, he says, I don't think about how scared I am, or like, I just think about what I have to do.
I think what he said was like, I don't think about what will happen. I just think about what I have to do.
Yeah, so what needs to be done.
What needs to be done.
Yeah. And that's so exactly it for Vos. It's like he can't change if he's already in the bad situation. He can't change what he doesn't know. He can't like, wait, everybody stop trying to kill me so I can go read a book, he uses the time that he has, and I made a point to say he has used the month that he's had to try and learn a little bit more, at least about Etuvar, now that he knows he's going to keep being a part of his life, and that informed why he's cooler with him now, right? But with the rest of them, you know, if they attack him, he can't change that he was not prepared for that. All he knows is that he came here to do one thing.
Get his girl.
And win this thing.
Yeah.
However he has to do that, you know? So the idea that the gods are after him is like, okay, it's on the list, but how can that possibly change what I have to do? So why should that penetrate my like focus in any way?
Right. I think Bose is so fun. I think he's so fun. He's just like, I'm just watching a little guy run around, and he's not like devil may care, but being disrespectful to Etuvar. Here's the thing about Vos being disrespectful to Etuvar in the first episode. Etuvar across the world is considered like the coolest guy. Like, not just because he created vampires, but like anyone who has met him says the same thing. He's like Keanu Reeves. He's the Keanu Reeves of Koei. Like, everyone's like, he's nice. So the fact that Vos was immediately like, you're stinky, I don't like you, was so funny.
And the thing is too, like, I'm sure that he encountered that reality over that month, and is like a little bit embarrassed and is kind of trying to save face.
Yeah.
The mistrust is still very real, you know.
And it's fair. It's fair to mistrust, because if you want to treat him as just a guy, like, you don't know this guy.
Yeah. Exactly.
I don't know you.
You're just a person with near infinite power.
Yes.
And that he just can't take lightly.
Yeah.
So
how is Vos feeling about Tlali? Because I thought it was very interesting that he seemed to not give a single shit that she did become a vampire, and he was looking at her new vampire visage, and like that she's different now, but the same, but very different.
Now, by this point in the story, we have not revealed to the audience why they're not together.
No, we have not.
So it's hard to answer this question without that coming up. So I'm gonna try. I'll just say he had no illusions about that's what was going to happen.
That was her goal.
The thing about him is that he's not doing this because he thinks she needs protecting. He's doing this because he wants to be with her. And this is the way to do that. Yes, he wants to serve her, whatever that means, but like, really he just wants to be with her and do for her and make up for the wrong that he thinks that he's done as well. He thinks he should not have let her go. But he knew what she was going to do. He knew that was going to happen, and there was no doubt that she would succeed because he has complete faith in her. That's what I'm trying to convey, is he kind of thinks that she can't do wrong. He fully believes in her capabilities to do whatever she wants to. So he knows.
It's like he views her as divine, but without the like their overpowered peopleness.
Yeah.
Like the true definition of like a divine being is how he sees her.
Well, yeah, he thinks nature makes perfect things.
And she's a perfect thing.
And she's a perfect thing. Yeah, exactly.
Wow, amazing, incredible.
So he was not surprised. The idea of him seeing that for the first time,
like how she looks,
it was realizing, it was like having his, this is where it gets hard to talk about without spoiling. Let's just say he is now definitely convinced that letting her go was wrong, because the reasoning for it that he had of why he couldn't be a part of that whole thing in the first place, that worldview has kind of already been proven wrong.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it was when he looked at her, what could possibly have changed who she is. She is who she is. The people still loved her. And what I wanted to zero in on is that's what he was watching. The fact that all of these people were smart enough to know to cleave to her.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
To recognize a perfect thing when they saw it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so how she looked didn't matter. Which is like retroactively heartbreaking when you consider that that was at the core, that was part of the reason why he didn't want it to happen in the first place, was, you know, anything. I'm basically saying it. I really am basically saying it, but you'll see it.
No, you're not. You're not. No, you're not. No, me as the GM, I'm trust me when I say he's not completely spoiling it.
All right.
Yeah.
But yeah, he has now had it 100% confirmed that changing the physical composition of her body in this way, changing what her mortality and what she is, just being a vampire and not being a elf or human. I forget if she's an elf or a human. Oh no.
She's also, there are no humans in this world.
Right.
She is an elf.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
An NUV. The correct term in this world is NUV, for reasons. So she is an NUV, elf person. Yes.
So he has now had it confirmed that the version of him that believed that was a problem was completely wrong and naive and stupid, and it's more shame than anything else.
Damn. Do you think he's scared that she's moved on? Because we know what Etuvar said. But do you think there's any part of him that doubts what Etuvar said? And like there's like that like very mortal like, what if Etuvar is wrong and she has a new boyfriend?
Yeah, I mean, if he does all this and wins and then gets to be with her, but she doesn't want him there or in that way, yeah, that would be horrible. And I say that he can't feel fear, but that's the thing, you know, he's chasing fear, but he's not looking in that direction because he knows what he's going to find there would ruin his ability to do what he needs to do. So he is very deliberately not thinking about that, and it's easy for him to not think about that because he has to focus on what he's doing. So for the time being, he can justify it with the mechanism that he's already trained his brain to do, of like, all I can think about is what needs to be done. If that's the end result, it doesn't change that I had to try and find out, you know. So but absolutely, he will not be okay if that's the case. Yeah.
Hee hee. Hoo hoo. I'm just having so much fun.
Yeah.
Just having just like a grand old time. I really think this is a cool setting that I've created. And you know, I don't want to like toot my own horn and shake my own tambourine, but anytime I talk to it or like send lore to people about Koei, they're like, this is really cool and I really like it, tell me more. And so I will tell you more whether you want me to or not. And so I can't wait to really get into the actual like weeds, because episode 1 was called The Before. Episode 2 that we just shot is called The Now. And so that's sort of to signify like the building of the narrative and the status quo of before and the status quo of now, being, you know, 1 month apart, but still. So the next episode really is where like the plot's gonna kick in, and I'm very excited for it.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that we're doing this, and that we're both pushing ourselves in different ways, because I think it's paying off.
I agree.
If you guys have any questions, comments, want to yell at me, for because I made you feel something, sound off, and I will look at them and I will address them in the next talkback or on the social medias, whatever comes first. But thank you for engaging with this story and this storytelling that we're doing, and I love you all. Yay.
Yeah. Well spoken.
Yeah, watch out for the next episode. I'm turning into Cher. Watch out for the next episode of Godkiller Retribution. And for Starlet and for City and anything else we may be doing. Thank you to everyone, particularly Noir, who I'm gonna in the future try to see if he can be on a talkback or something. When we get further down the line, I think that'd be really fun.
Do our good old Zoom boxes.
Our good old Zoom boxes. Yeah, this is gonna be really easy to edit because there's just one box,
one box,
and it's just us. But thank you to everyone who's guesting. Thank you to everyone who's listened. Thank you to everyone who's commented, liked, supported. Thank you to God for allowing me to sort of question your existence and create this show.
I was wondering where you were going to go with that, because I was like, I don't know if you're saying that.
And bye.
Yeah.